G'day internet, Tom here in the Purpose Built Moto garage. This time around we have an absolute perler build for you. It's been a little while since we tried our hand at a VMX bike, and a DT400 is one of my absolute favourites from back in the day. Let me run you through this 1978 VMX Scrambler. Now the 1978 DT400 holds a pretty special place in my heart. I own one of these bikes myself, so I was super hyped to get my hands on one for our rider Clint. The boys and I have tooled up recently. We've got a bunch of gear now to do sheet metal shaping. So on this build, on our future builds, you'll start to see that worked into our projects a little bit more. With that said, let's go on to the front end and the custom work that we've done there. So on the front end, we've completely stripped the old forks and done away with them, sold them on to another collector of DTs that I know here on the Gold Coast, Scotty. The forks have come off, been replaced with a KX250F front end, quite a late model. We've got the upgraded brakes that came with that, but everything else had to be sort of custom done. So the front headlight plate here has been handmade. We've mounted our 4.5-inch LED headlight on the front with these two sort of spotlights as a running light or a DRL. The front fender here has been hand shaped out of some aluminium sheet, welded up and fitted super nice. This enabled us to put a really classically styled front fender on a super modern front end. And the two elements work really well together on this bike, I think too. The fork shrouds, again, have been custom made. We could have gone with some plastic setups off the standard KX250F, but there's no real fun in that, so those have been hand shaped, welded up and painted to suit. The wheels on this bike have been rebuilt stainless steel spokes using a set of Excel rims. We're running a 21/18 setup on this bike, so you can get some nice dual sport tyres, but we've gone with the Dunlop D606. They're about the gnarliest knobby that you can ride that are street legal on the road. So they look sick, handle incredibly off-road, and you can rustle them around on the street as well. The suspension on this thing has been dialed in by Charlie Costanzo from Costanzo Racing Tuned, and I even let him keep his stickers on there. You're welcome, Charlie. The accessories up here, we've got a set of Pro Taper handlebars, some new risers, and we've gone with a Daytona Diva digital dash. So this thing is an all-in-one setup that we've been able to mount behind the headlight plate. Looks super trick. And sort of has all the functionality built in, voltage gauge, you've got a gear indicator, not that this thing has one, speedo, tacho, all in one there. Handlebars have been dressed up with aftermarket levers, your master cylinder and clutch have been replaced. We've got our Purpose Built Moto push button switches here in a silver, a domino throttle, and of course our Scrambler mirrors. Yoo-hoo! A super nice and tidy effect on this because you're enabled to drop your mirrors below the bars and mount them out of the way. So you keep that sort of clean view over the handlebars, but it keeps your bike legal as well. The indicators on the front end are an LED hollow tip done in a silver. Moving towards the back of the bike, we've got the engine that's been completely gone through. These old two-strokes are pretty simple. We open it up. It didn't look too bad at all in there, but we gave it a once-over anyway, just for good measure. The carburetor's been swapped out for a Mikuni. We've got a new intake boot. That sort of stuff on these bikes tends to deteriorate pretty quickly, so all of that's been set up nice and new. The engine's been given a coat of paint, and this expansion chamber needed a fair bit of attention too. These old things pit quite a bit, especially if they're not taken care of. So we had a few dings to repair. We actually had to cut and replace one of the bend panels on the front there, and then it's been stripped back and Cerakoted, so this thing won't deteriorate anymore unless it gets really badly chipped, which you can patch up anyway. Now, a really cool feature on this project is the airbox. So a lot of the time when we do these scramblers, they're not really meant to be, you know, like thrashed too hard off-road, but I know Clint wants to be doing that. So we've built an airbox. What we've done here is use some aluminium sheet metal to create a box that links up to the intake plenum on the carburetor, and used an aftermarket DNA filter. Now, this sort of stuff, when we're doing it, I have to troll through I don't know, pages and pages of the DNA catalog to find a filter that will fit. So this one just happened to be off a late model BMW R18, those cruisers that they released a year or so ago. This is a performance air filter that they make for that. So we've taken that, made the airbox flange to suit, and then the rest of this was supplied by DNA for us to bolt on. So in terms of changing your air filter out, it's 3 screws there. You can pop this thing off, give it a clean or swap it, and then put it back on. And it's a lot better protected off the rear wheel than where it would be if we were to use a pod filter or something like that. We did have to get rid of a bunch of stuff in here because we wanted like a nicer look. We had to lift suspension and just remove a bunch of shit anyway. Another thing that we've done on this project is a 12-volt upgrade. So in order to run all of our LED lighting, the nice digital dash and that sort of stuff, you've got to pretty much turf the old stator and rotor in the engine here and replace it. So that's all been upgraded. We've got a new coil, leads, plug, all of that sort of stuff is included with this 12-volt upgrade kit that we get. And then you've got a nice new regulator rectifier that puts out a steady voltage, charges a little battery that we have under the seat, and you're able to run all modern gear on your vintage motocross bike. The rear suspension too has received a 30mm lift. That was sent away with our front shocks to Charlie. So the shock has been kept stock, it's been rebuilt, and then we've extended it too. The rear of the frame was modified slightly. Normally you have like quite a large hoop on the back here, and we've kept this sort of pressed metal because I actually quite like the way it looked. We've capped it off here to mount our rear fender. Again, this fender's a handmade aluminium piece we've done. We've welded on our tail tidy kit to mount your plate on, and for the tail lights we've just gone with a super simple 3-in-1 hollow tip. So this is your brake, tail light and indicators all in one on the rear here. Last few details on the rear of the bike. We've retained the standard DT400 hub and drum brake and just replaced it with a new rim and tyre on the back here. And then we've retrofitted an FMF power core too. So I'll flip this bike around, you can have a look at that. If I can flip this without it falling off the stand, you're shouting ramen. There we go. All right, now let's talk about this side of the bike. So, as I mentioned before, we fitted an FMF power core 2 here. Took a little bit of modifying, not too hard though. Well worth the upgrade. These things look so sick. They sort of give you that little bit of a modern motocross feel, and they sound so good on these old bikes. So keeps it reasonably quiet. This guy's gonna be riding it around, so we don't want him to be getting hassled by the cops or his fucking neighbors or whatever. So yeah, we've tidied that up. This particular model of bike, the expansion chamber crosses over the center of the bike, which makes it a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest with you, but it's sort of, you know, something you have to deal with when it comes to these bikes. Even the aftermarket expansion chambers always cross over. So we've just sort of had to deal with that and retain it, although we've kept it tucked inside the frame here nice and tight to give like a really clean look and keep the heat away from your leg as well. So on this side of the bike, there's sort of not too much to tell. We've replaced the standard foot pegs. We've actually custom retrofitted a set of later model aftermarket pegs on there. So you have like a nice wide grippy peg. And the last bit of sort of custom fab that we've done here is this little oil tank. So the old plastic one was sort of like an opaque, clear, weird plastic. They look like shit. So we've custom fabricated one of these, mounted it up onto the frame, and then linked it up to the oil pump, which sits in here. It's sort of unreliable. A lot of guys get rid of them, but in my experience, if you can sort of like pull them apart, really clean them out and replace the seals inside, they're actually not too bad as long as you get them set right. So we've managed to repair that and keep it going so you don't have to worry about pre-mixing your fuel every time you go out for a ride. I'll give you guys a little bit of a peek in at the brains of the bike. So under the seat, we fabricated just a small fiberglass electrics tray here. We've got our tiny little baby battery, a couple of relays for our switching because we've got a tiny key on this thing that sort of can't handle the current that we need it to. So the ignition is controlled by a relay, as is the cutout switch, and then we've got a black box control module that makes everything flash and beep. So if you want to have a bit of a quick zoom in on this one, Brando, you can see the wiring work that we've done here. So this black box controls everything that you need and allows you to run our super clean handlebar switches while you're doing it. Last thing I'll run you guys through is the paintwork. So as the 78-400 rolled in here, the color scheme was pretty much the same. The white was a little duller, the red wasn't as vibrant, and the decals were quite different. So what we've basically done is taken the standard decal set, flipped it upside down and modified it quite a bit, but that's all been painted in. It's not a vinyl sticker anymore. We wanted something classic, something racy, but something that sort of like gave the bike a little bit of edge as well. So the red, black and white sort of really stood out. We've sort of most part kept things pretty simple. The seat done by Timeless Auto Trim was done in a nice Alcantara top with gripper sides, and then you've got like the little Adidas 3-stripe band there that I think's pretty sick. And then also on the headlight cowling here too, we've added a little bit of red and black detail. Again, like really tying the whole bike together. It was just lucky that Costanzo's fork stickers fit the bill on this bike too, so I was allowed to keep them there. And then of course a little PBM Delta to tie up the front fork guards as well. I'll give this thing a little bit of a start now, and then I'll take you out on a little test ride. I'm not going to take this thing through a dirt track because I don't want to clean it after I test ride, so you just have to put up with our GoPro video of me hooning around on the streets with it. Generally, this is the part where your favorite YouTuber is going to ask you to subscribe to their Patreon. Luckily for you, we're not YouTubers. We're bike builders and parts makers. So if you like the content we create and the bikes we build, or you hate both of those things and just want to grab some gear for your next project, make sure you show your support, jump on our online store and give your bike that Purpose Built Moto touch. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.